I knew something was wrong the moment the cab turned onto my street. Maybe it was the way the sun hit the pavement, too warm for November, like it had forgotten what season it was supposed to be. Or maybe it was the silence. No kids yelling. No neighbor's dog barking. Just me. The plastic bag of hospital discharge papers in my lap, and the driver glancing at me in the mirror like I was lost. I hadn't been home in 6 weeks. 6 weeks of blinking ceiling tiles, stale jello, and machines that beeped louder than people spoke. 6 weeks since I collapsed in the staff break room and woke up to a blur of white coats and the word sepsis. I had texted them when I was first, admitted. I even apologized. "I'm so sorry to worry you all," I wrote. "They're keeping me in ICU for a bit. I think I just need rest." Only my sister replied, "Let us know if you need anything. Hope it's not too serious. Not even a visit." I thought maybe they didn't understand how bad it got. Maybe they assumed I was overreacting, like I always supposedly did. But then the social worker asked if I had any family to help me with post-care. I gave them my brother's name, then my mother's. Both said they were out of town. Only my neighbor Sylvia came. She brought homemade soup and read aloud to me when the nurse let her sneak in. She didn't say much, just shook her head softly when she noticed no one else had signed the visitor log. The cab pulled up to my building and stopped. I reached for my keys. My fingers hesitated. The lanyard felt unfamiliar. Cold. "I'll be fine," I told the driver, forcing a smile. I didn't have enough money to tip him well, so I gave him my gratitude instead. The hallway smelled like someone had cooked bacon and burned it. When I got to my door, I slid the key in. It didn't turn. I tried again, slower this time. I flipped the key over, even though I knew better. The lock was stiff. New. That wasn't my deadbolt. I stared at the door for a long time, like it would blink and turn back into mine. The number was right. 5C. The dent in the bottom panel where I dropped a box last spring was still there, but the doormat was different. A cursive K in gold. My name didn't start with K. I knocked. I didn't even know why. I just knocked. A girl opened the door. Not my sister. Not anyone I knew. She had messy blonde hair tied in a lazy bun, wearing my university hoodie. My hoodie. She looked surprised, but not guilty. "Oh, hi?" I felt my stomach pitch. "This is my apartment," she blinked. "Oh, you must be her." Her who? She stepped back a little, crossing her arms. "Maya said you were in the hospital. She said you gave it up." I didn't hear anything after that. I must have walked back to the elevator. I must have stood on the sidewalk, but all I remember is the weight of that key still in my hand, useless and cold. I didn't cry. Not right away. I sat on the curb outside my own building, arms wrapped around my knees, watching my breath fog in, the air like it belonged more than I did. My phone was at 12%. I hadn't charged it since the hospital. I hadn't needed to. Nobody called. But now I needed someone. Anyone. I opened my contacts and hovered my thumb over Maya's name. I shouldn't have, but I tapped. It rang twice. Then voicemail. "Hi," I said, before my voice caught in my throat. I'm outside my apartment. Except, I guess it's not mine anymore. There's a girl in there, wearing my clothes. She said, "You told her I gave it up?" Silence. The message was still recording, but I didn't know what else to say. I hung up. The flashbacks didn't wait to be invited. They slid under my skin like cold rain. The night Maya called me from her new condo, asking if I'd mind subletting for a little while. "Just for a few months," she said sweetly. "You're barely there anyway, and it's so close to her office, you'd be helping her so much." Her, the new girlfriend. Kristen, I think. I barely remembered meeting her. She never looked me in the eye. "I'd still pay the utilities," Maya had added, like that made it generous. I said no. I told her I was tired, that work was eating me alive, and I needed my own space to breathe. She laughed. "You've always been dramatic, so I assumed that was the end of it, until now. I used the last of my phone battery to call Sylvia. She came with a coat. She always brought a coat." "I should have checked sooner," she whispered, as she helped me into her living room. "I saw that girl going in and out last week with boxes, but I thought maybe you two were roommates." I didn't say anything. I just stared at the mug she handed me. Chamomile. No honey. She knew I couldn't have sugar. I didn't tell her about the hoodie. I didn't tell her how Kristen's laundry basket was the same one I left behind, or how the aloe plant I'd nursed back from the edge was now sitting on the windowsill, thriving under someone else's hand. That night, I slept on Sylvia's pull-out couch, surrounded by the hum of her old fridge and the slow tick of a wall clock. I couldn't stop replaying conversations I used to think were harmless. Maya telling me, "You don't really need that place, it's just a studio." Or Mom, the one time I called her from my apartment and mentioned how lonely I felt. "Well, at least Maya's got someone," she'd said. "Maybe that's why she needs space more." They always made it sound like my independence was selfish. Like my solitude meant I didn't deserve privacy, or presence, or a place of my own. They used my silence against me, my quietness, my way of not making a fuss. That's what really broke me. Not the key. Not the couch I might never sit on again. But the realization that, to them, I was easy to take from. Because I never yelled. Because I never made them feel guilty. Because I always stepped aside. I didn't step aside this time. I opened my laptop the next morning and pulled up the lease. Still had it in PDF. I still had the email chain from the landlord, and I still had proof that my name was the only one on it. The first thing I noticed when I opened the lease agreement was how small my name looked. Just 6 letters, typed plainly in black ink, between a line break and a signature date. But it was the only name on the document. No cosigner, no second occupant. Just me. My name. My rent. My space. And yet, I was sleeping on a borrowed couch, with a borrowed blanket, wondering how much more of my life they'd casually erase. Sylvia hovered gently behind me. "Are you sure you want to start anything?" she asked, like a mother, asking her child if the fire was really worth striking. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I opened another email. One from 3 months ago, when I asked my landlord if I could change the locks. He said no problem, as long as I covered the cost. I had the receipt too. That meant someone else, Maya or Kristen, paid to replace them again. I thought about that small act. Not the money, not the lock itself, but the decision to do it, the moment they physically shut me out. I emailed the landlord first. Calm, polite, brief. "Hi, Dave. I was recently discharged from the hospital and returned to find someone else occupying my apartment. I never authorized a sublease or transfer. Please advise how to proceed." No emotion. No panic. Just facts. Let them sit in his inbox like quiet fire. I walked to the library that afternoon. I needed space to think. The walk felt longer than I remembered. My legs weren't strong yet. My body had barely come back to me. I passed a couple holding hands. They were laughing. The girl wore a gray scarf. It looked like mine. I used to leave it on the hook by the door. I wondered if Kristen wore it now, mistaking it for something she bought, or pretending she didn't notice the initials sewn into the tag. At the library, I found a corner desk and opened my journal. The one I hadn't touched in months. July 3rd. Tired again. I wish someone would just sit with me. No words, just presence. August 10th. I think Maya only calls when she needs to borrow things, but maybe that's what family is. September. 2. No one came to the doctor's appointment. I felt small in that waiting room, smaller when I paid the bill alone. I stopped writing in October. The hospital happened in October, and no one came. The landlord replied the next morning. "Hi, I'm so sorry to hear this. I was told by your sister that you were vacating due to a health emergency. She said she had your permission. I'll initiate a notice of unauthorized occupancy. Please keep any communication civil. We'll proceed formally from here." There it was. She said she had your permission. Maya had spoken for me. Again. She always did. At doctors' offices, at restaurants, at family dinners. When I was 12 and cried because I didn't want to share my room, Mom said, "Let Maya explain." When I was 20 and asked why I hadn't received part of Grandma's inheritance, she said, "Maya needed it more." When did I give up the right to speak for myself? Or had I just let them practice speaking over me so often, they assumed the silence was mine? I called the property office next. They said Kristen had 10 days to vacate. 10 days. I circled the date on Sylvia's fridge calendar and read, "Not with vengeance, with certainty." I didn't tell Maya. I didn't call Kristen. I didn't argue. I waited. Quiet. Like they trained me to be. But this time I wasn't waiting for permission. The first time Maya called me after the eviction notice, her voice was light. Too light. "Hey, you're out already?" "That's so good," she said, like we'd just bumped into each other at brunch. I paused before answering. Let the silence say something. Then, "You changed my locks while I was unconscious." There it was. Just enough weight in my voice to make her falter. She laughed nervously. "Okay, wow, dramatic much. You weren't unconscious the whole time." I didn't respond. "You weren't using the place," she added, like I was hoarding something unnecessary. "Kristen was just staying temporarily. You always say you don't even like being in that apartment. You told me once it felt lonely." I swallowed hard. "So you gave it to her?" She bristled. "God, you act like I burned it down. You were in the hospital. I was helping." "You were helping yourself." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. 2 hours later, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. She texted instead. "Can we talk?" "Maya is really upset. She said you're making things difficult with the landlord." Not "are you okay?" Not "how are you feeling?" Just "Maya is really upset." It took everything in me not to hurl Sylvia's phone across the room. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the pull-out couch, watching the refrigerator light blink every so often. My chest felt like it was stitched with invisible thread. Tight, pulled, holding too much in. I kept thinking of the day I first signed the lease. How proud I was. The way I stood in the middle of that tiny studio and imagined what silence would finally feel like when it was mine. Not the silence of being ignored, but the peace of belonging. I bought secondhand furniture, rolled out a mismatched rug, sewed my initials into a scarf because no one ever remembered it was mine. I made that place home, and she walked into it like it was an Airbnb. On day 5, I received a forwarded letter from the landlord. Kristen was being formally evicted. No protest, no threats, no apology. I stared at the letter like it might apologize on her behalf. It didn't. Day 6, Maya showed up at Sylvia's door. I heard the knock before Sylvia did. I knew that knock, soft, then louder, like she was practicing being patient. Sylvia opened the door just enough to make Maya hesitate. "I need to speak to her," Maya said. "No, hi." "No, please." Sylvia looked back at me. I nodded once. Maya stepped in like the apartment owed her something. "You really blindsided me," she started. I tilted my head. "Is that what this is? You feeling blindsided?" She ignored the sarcasm. "You made it legal. You didn't even tell me. You didn't tell me you moved someone in while I was intubated." Her expression flickered. "I thought you'd want to help. Like always." That part cut. Because she was right. That's who I used to be. The helper, the giver, the extra, seat filler. The one who watched bags while others posed for photos. I stood up. Slowly. Carefully. My legs were still weak. But I looked her in the eye for the first time in years. "You didn't ask," I said quietly. "You assumed I'd be too tired to fight. And you were right, I was. But I'm not anymore," she scoffed. "All this over an apartment?" "No," I said, over finally saying no. She left without another word. Sylvia didn't say anything either. She just handed me a glass of water. I held it in both hands. The warmth shocked me. It had been so long since anyone gave me something without asking first. Day 10 came quietly. No apology. No confrontation. Just an envelope slipped under Sylvia's. Door, keys inside. My old ones. Not the replacements Kristen used. I turned them over in my hand. They felt unfamiliar, like artifacts from another life. Like they belonged to someone I used to be. Sylvia offered to walk with me back to the apartment. I told her no. I needed to go alone. The hallway looked the same, light flickering above the elevator. A faint scratch in the paint where someone once moved a couch. I ran my fingers along the wall, as if touch could slow time. When I reached my door, I didn't open it right away. I just stood there. I wanted to prepare myself, to feel ready. But the truth was, I wouldn't. And maybe that was okay. The key turned this time. The door creaked open like it had been holding its breath. The room smelled like someone else's lotion. A scent too floral, too artificial. I opened the windows first. Let the cold bite the air. Let it remind me the seasons had changed. They left things behind. The aloe plant was still on the sill. The rug was rolled up wrong. My books were rearranged. But the walls were mine. The chipped mug still sat in the dish rack. My old calendar was tucked behind the microwave, frozen in August, and my scarf, gray, soft, familiar, was folded on the arm of the couch. I picked it up and held it for a long time. No apology note, no text, no flowers, just an empty silence that still didn't belong to me. I spent the rest of the day unpacking the parts of myself I had buried. My old journal went back in the nightstand drawer. The blanket my grandmother crocheted, fraying at the edges, returned to its place at the foot of the bed. I lit the vanilla candle I'd hidden in the kitchen cabinet, untouched, a ghost of comfort. But it wasn't peace I felt. It was mourning. Not just of the apartment, or of my privacy, but of the version of me who believed she had to earn kindness through quiet compliance. That evening, I lay on the mattress with the lights off. The ceiling blinked with car headlights from the street. I remembered a moment, years ago. I was 16. Maya had taken my phone, claiming I didn't need to talk to people who didn't care about me. Mom had backed her up. I sat outside on the porch that night, my bare feet cold on the concrete, watching the sky and wondering if silence could be a punishment. Now I understood. It wasn't the silence that hurt. It was how they used mine to write their stories, how they painted me passive, generous, too nice to notice I was being pushed aside. But I noticed now, and I wouldn't let them narrate anymore. 3 days after I moved back in, Maya emailed me. Not a text, not a call. An email. Subject: Can we talk without all this bitterness? Hey, I think things have gotten really blown out of proportion. I understand you were sick and everything, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't think you'd need the apartment right away. Kristen had nowhere else to go, and I thought you'd understand, because you always do. I really think we should talk this out like adults. I'd like to move past this. Let me know when you're ready to stop being cold. Maya. I read it 3 times. Didn't cry. I didn't shake. But my hands felt hollow when I finally let them fall from the keyboard. I didn't think you'd need the apartment right away, as if I were some placeholder. As if my life were only real when she gave it shape. I didn't reply. Not that day, not even the next. Instead, I cleaned. I scrubbed the counters, opened all the drawers, tossed every single thing they'd left behind. Kristen's lip balm, a canvas tote bag with some startup's logo, an old receipt for wine I never drank. It felt like exorcism. Sylvia came by around noon with a paper bag of groceries, and that look she gives me when she wants to say something but won't unless I do. First, she found me on the floor, rearranging the bookshelf. Looks better already, she said softly. I nodded. It still smells like her. She looked around. That'll fade. I didn't ask her to stay. She just sat beside me and helped sort through the books. We didn't talk. It felt like the first real comfort I'd had in months. That night, I drafted a reply to Maya's email. Not to send, just to say what needed saying. You didn't ask if I was okay. You didn't come to the hospital. You didn't even bring me soup. You used my absence to give away something that wasn't yours. Then you called me bitter for not applauding you for it. You've always mistaken my silence for agreement, my softness for consent. But you don't get to narrate my boundaries anymore. You didn't forget me. You erased me. And I noticed. I closed the draft. Didn't send it. Didn't need to. Some things only need to be written to be released. Later, that week, Mom left a voicemail. I almost deleted it without listening, but something told me to hear her out. Maybe I was searching for apology, or even a hint of regret. Instead, I got this. Hi, sweetie. I hope you're feeling better. Maya told me you were upset, and I just want you both to move on. She was just trying to help Kristen. You know how hard things have been for her. You're stronger, always have been. That's why I never worried too much about you. You always figure things out. Anyway, call me when you're ready to talk without all this anger. Okay? I sat in silence for a long time. Not even sadness anymore. Just a strange kind of clarity. You're stronger, so I never worried. That was it, wasn't it? Their love had always been measured by who broke first, and because I didn't cry loud enough, they assumed I didn't bleed. That night, I unplugged the landline, blocked Maya's number, set Mom's to voicemail, not out of hatred, out of peace. A boundary isn't revenge. It's a door quietly locked. The old photo was tucked behind the spice rack. I hadn't seen it in years. It must have fallen there one day, back when I still cooked on weekends, back when I still believed home meant family. It was a picture of me and Maya. I was 10. She was 13. We stood in our shared bedroom, wearing dresses 2 sizes too big, faces smudged with lipstick. Mom had told us not to touch her makeup, but Maya said we were allowed if we didn't get caught. I looked at myself, the way I smiled back then, crooked and small, like I wasn't sure I had permission. She smiled like she owned the camera. I almost threw it out. Almost. But something stopped me. Instead, I slipped it into the back of my closet. Not to save it. Just to let it rest somewhere quiet. That weekend, I walked 2 miles to the old bookstore by the train tracks. The one Maya said was too dusty and too sad. I used to come here when I needed air. The kind of air that smelled like paper and meant I didn't have to speak. I ran my fingers along the spines, touching titles I'd read years ago. I bought a used copy of Jane Eyre, not because I needed it, but because the margin notes reminded me someone else had once tried to make sense of things quietly too. When I paid, the woman at the counter smiled at me and said, "Back again?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." Back home, I rearranged the living room. I pushed the couch to the opposite wall, tossed out the rug, planted a new herb on the windowsill. One I chose, one I would grow. I didn't try to restore what had been lost. I didn't want the apartment to go back to how it was. That girl, the one who tiptoed around her own space, grateful just to be there, was gone. I wasn't rebuilding what they ruined. I was building something that never included them in the first place. On the final Sunday of the month, I received a card in the mail. No return address, just one sentence inside. "I hope you're not still mad. Families don't stay mad forever." No signature. But I knew the handwriting. Mom's careful, looping letters, always leaning too far right. I placed the card under the aloe plant, not to keep it, just to let the roots grow over it. The next morning, I bought a new scarf. Gray, again. But softer, warmer. I didn't sew my initials into this one. I didn't need to. Because now, if anyone ever took it, I'd speak. Winter came late that year. The first snow arrived in mid-December, dusting the fire escapes in powdered white. I opened the window just enough to feel the cold bite the edge of my sleeves. It reminded me I was still here, still breathing, still mine. The apartment felt smaller somehow, but not in a bad way. Not like confinement, more like a sweater that finally fit. I moved slower now, more gently. My body still whispered its limits, but I listened now. And for once, I wasn't apologizing for the quiet. Maya never followed up. No calls, no letters, not even through Mom. That used to hurt. The absence, the withholding. But now, it felt like peace. I realized I was no longer waiting for them to understand me, to regret, to return. Letting go wasn't a grand act. It happened one day when I didn't check my phone, when I didn't write a message I'd never send, when I cooked dinner in silence and didn't feel the need to fill it. On New Year's Eve, Sylvia invited me to her daughter's house. There would be soup and puzzles and fireworks on the roof. I almost said no. The version of me from a few months. Ego would have invented an excuse, would have worried about being too much, taking up space that wasn't mine. But this time, I said yes. I brought a tin of shortbread, store-bought, wrapped in simple gold ribbon. No overcompensating, no overthinking, just enough. At midnight, as the sky cracked with light and sound, I stood by the window, hands warm from a borrowed mug. Someone handed me a sparkler. I didn't wave it. I just watched it burn. Slow, steady, quiet. A brief, glowing thing that didn't need to last forever to be beautiful. When I got home that night, the apartment was still. Soft. Undemanding. I placed the scarf gently on the hook, hung my coat, lit a candle. I didn't need revenge. Had silence again, but this time, I chose it.